Hey there folks, welcome to the Photo Video Show where we explore all things DSLR. I'm your host, Mark Puckett, and on today's show I'm going to be comparing the Nikon D600 with the Nikon D7000. Like many of you guys, I was a crop sensor guy for quite a long time. I just never could justify the extra cost to myself to pull the trigger and go and move on up to a full frame, but I finally did. And there are some pros, there are some cons, and I'd like to discuss those with you if nothing else, but to make you a more well-informed consumer, and I hope that you'll gain a better understanding of the differences and the things and the suches in the business that you can expect from these two cameras should you be getting ready to either A, buy one or the other, or be upgrading from one to the other. So if you guys are ready, let's go ahead and get started. So first off, let's go ahead and start off with some aesthetics. As you can see, the Nikon D600 looks very, very similar to the D7000. There are a few minor changes here and there, but if you look, I mean, for the most part, it's pretty well the same. The biggest change is that massive sensor that fills up the entire lens frame. You look back over here at the Nikon D7000 and you can see that the sensor size is much smaller. But the overall look from the front, button placement, everything is relatively the same. So you're not really going to be just shell-shocked and in disbelief when you hold the two cameras together, because there's not much relative difference. The biggest one is obviously, like I said, that sensor. I mean, it is just huge in the D600 compared to the D7000. Okay, so moving around to the back side, both the D7000 and the D600, they're really not that much different. It is an upgrade going from the D7000 to the D600, but it's not such a radical upgrade that you're going to have to relearn every bit of your hardware. There are some minute differences going from the top to the bottom. Your play and your garbage button are in the exact same place. Your autofocus lock and auto exposure lock button is exactly the same place. Your directional pad is a little bit different from the D7000 going up to the D600. Your button placement here on the left, which I've been enjoying a whole lot. You get a new button on the left, which is your picture style button, which is the second one down, and your ISO button, instead of being in third place, is now in fifth place at the very bottom. So it makes it much easier for you to change ISO on the D600 because you know exactly where the ISO button is. Now your live view button is completely different because you actually have to press a button to go to live view, and you switch between camera and video camera. And the record button is now on the very top of the D600. Info button is in the exact same place. Overall, very nice. Now going back to the D7000, you don't have the picture style button there between the menu and your white balance, and your ISO button is not at the very bottom, so you do have to fumble around a little bit. Your live view switch, I really liked that live view switch with the record button directly there in the middle. There was really no guesswork as to where it was at. Very convenient, but overall not much difference. Moving on to the left side of the camera, what you see is all your flaps here. You have a difference in texture between the D600 and the D7000. The D7000 seem to have some continuity but with texture going from the grip and to the flaps. Here they're a lot more smooth, and you have 3 tabs instead of just 2. When you open them up, you will be revealed to see that you have both a headphone jack so that you can monitor audio, plus a microphone audio. You also have the option for Wi-Fi, whereas in the D7000 you do not have Wi-Fi. You do have GPS in both, and as far as the D600 is concerned, you also have pure HDMI out video with the D600 so that you can record to an external recorder. Very nice, and thank you Nikon for that. But overall, the functionality and your options vary only slightly, but it is definitely an upgrade to have those extra options in the D600 as opposed to the D7000. On the right side of the camera, you can quickly tell that the D600 has a much thicker, chunkier, more contoured grip, which I've been really enjoying over my D7000. If you open up the card slots, you'll see that we now still, just like we did, still have the dual card slots. No compact flash, but most people use SD these days anyway. So a welcome re-addition to the Nikon D600 in my opinion. Not much else has changed though. Now on the top of the cameras, the D600 now has the double locking wheel for your scene selector and your options as far as shooting modes go, and your record button is now on top next to your shutter release button. The D7000, on the other hand, only has a single locking wheel for your shooting options, and the record button is down by the live view switch on the back, which I happen to personally prefer, but easily either of these two configurations, you will get used to them extremely fast. There are a lot of times where I do appreciate the new upgrades and changes. As far as the weight is concerned of these two cameras, I wanted to try weighing them out myself. I started off with the D600, and we're going to weigh this thing here in grams, and we get a total of 834 grams with no battery and no lens. That comes in at 29.4 ounces and 1.13 pounds. Now, moving on to the D7000, it is a tad bit smaller. It's a little bit lighter, so without a battery, it comes in at 757 grams, 26.7 ounces, and 1.10 pounds. So not much difference, but when you pick up that D600, you definitely feel the heft. And adding a battery, I just wanted to test this out myself, 94 grams and 3.3 ounces. Now for our first lighting test, I used a 45 watt CFL approximately 2 foot away. On top we have the D600 at 150% crop and the D7000 at 100% crop. Because I had light, I only went up to 1600 ISO here. So if you want to just check this out and kind of see how they do side by side, they're really very close when you actually crop the D600. Now it is a much different story when you're not using a crop in the D600. It has a lot more resolution, obviously, because of the fuller frame, but the dynamic range is, in my opinion, significantly better. A lot less noisy as well. But I'll show you some of that here in just a second. Go ahead and let the rest of this play out, and you can see for yourself. Moving on to some extremely low light, I've got 3 sets of candles here, and as you can tell just right off the bat, there's a different color difference between the two cameras. I don't want you to focus so much on the numbers here. I just want you to sort of look at the black at the very top around the candles and watch how the light changes. Look how the two cameras deal with the ISO noise. Both of these cameras were set to normal ISO noise reduction in camera. It just seems like the D600 handles the noise better. Not to mention that, but the grain pattern on the D600 just looks more natural. It looks more like film rather than a digital camera. It really does take on a much better aesthetic than the D7000. The D7000 really starts to kind of get blocky and blotchy. You can already start to see the noise creeping in on the D7000, whereas the D600 is still handling it very well. There's no just massive amounts of just jumpiness all over the darker areas. This for me is probably a bigger selling point than anything else, is just its low light capability, just being able to handle that lower light and that extra ISO sensitivity and not just turning my image into garbage. The image on the right, even being at a high ISO as it is right now, it's still a very usable image for certain instances. Now it's starting to kind of degrade. And we're up pretty high now. I think we're up in the high 0.07 perhaps. On this test, I'm using the exact same 3 candle setup. And again, I don't want you to focus so much on the numbers. We get hung up on the numbers a lot, but I go all the way from 100 all the way up to high 2.0 in both of these cameras. And I've got a gray and white and black card behind the candles, and I just want to show you how each camera handles color rendition and handles ISO noise between the two of them as I move up through the ISO ranges. Like I said, the D600 seems to reproduce the extremely warm glow of the candle much better than the D7000. And it handles the ISO noisiness and graininess better in the darker areas. You'll really start to notice it in the black upper area the farther we get up in the ISO range. The pattern of the grain, once again, just looks better. It doesn't look as digital. I don't even mind a little bit of grain in my video footage. It gives it a little bit of a feeling of authenticness, in my opinion. But as you can see, the D7000 is already degrading so bad. Like, I would never be able to use that without having to do some level of post-processing to remove that grossness from there, and even then it may not even be possible. So as you can see, the D600 handily wins out over the D7000 as far as low light performance and ISO noise reduction. In this test, I used a color chart on my iPad to test color rendition, and to my surprise, both the D7000 and the D600 handled color very much the same way. It looks really good on both. Here I used a focus chart on my iPad, and again, both of them seem to focus very well and deep into the pattern. So there's really not much difference in the focusing on either of these cameras either. Moving on to a couple of moiré tests here. As you can see, the D7000 does a pretty good job of handling moiré. I really couldn't get the effect to materialize, which is not a bad thing, but it does give you an idea of how it's going to handle those odd patterns that cause moiré. Here we are with the D600. Again, I'm trying to shoot through this screen. I've got the fence in the back, and I've got horizontal lines on the house directly across, trying to produce that moiré pattern. I still can't get it to do exactly what I'm looking for, which is, again, not a bad thing, but you do see some moiré artifacts in the video. Yeah, it's not overly horrible, but it's not really all that awesome either. Now in this test, I tried to get the moiré to reproduce itself by shifting the camera back and forth between these fences here on either side of my chicken coop, and again, I couldn't really get it to do it hardcore, which again is a great thing, but I also probably wouldn't trust it 100% either. But the chickens didn't mind the company. Next, I moved on over to some dynamic range tests, also using my iPad. I really couldn't tell if I was getting a good enough shot here with the actual iPad in video mode, so I switched to pictures. So we have D7000, D600, D7000, D600. And as you can see, as it switches back and forth, the D600 seems to be able to see further and distinguish more so between the last two sections of gray and white. On these tests here, I had a front-facing sun, and I just took a picture, got some of the sky, and got these houses in front of me. The fronts of the houses are all in shadow, and as you can tell, both of the cameras do a relatively great job of still being able to hold that detail, even in those shadowy areas. Again, here with the D7000, the sun is pretty much just barely off to my right, as evidenced by the lens flare, but you can still see detail in that tree bark. Going on now to the D600, you have the exact same thing. Light blaring directly in front of me, but I can still see all the ridges and stuff in the bark of the tree. And looking at the exact same scene, only using video, even the video quality of both the cameras are pretty much the same. I still see a ton of detail in the bark of this tree, and it looks fantastic. I don't really see much of an issue here at all. Going on now to the D600, once again, every little thing, every little detail, and as a reminder, none of these have been retouched or color graded in any way, shape, or form. This is just straight out of the camera. Alright, so now I'm outside. We've got a little bit of ambient noise going on out here, but I'm not in that hollow room anymore, and this is a much more natural sound. So this is the D7000, and this is the Nikon D600. So, as you all can hear, there is a slight bit of difference to me. I don't really see a whole lot, but I do think the Nikon D600 does have a much more natural sound to the audio. But I'll leave the final decision up to you guys. So there you have it, and there you go. I hope all this information comes in useful and handy for all your purposes and needs and suches and whatnots. So if you would, come be our friends and pals over on Facebook and Twitter. Also, follow us on via.me for extra photo video fun. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Those small little things that you do for me, they mean so much, and I'm always appreciative. So again, please, please, thank you. So thanks again for stopping here at the Photo Video Show. I'm your host, Mark Puckett. I'll see you guys again next time.